Hey everyone, my name is Rooster and welcome back to another Mechabellum gameplay review. Today I've got a game for you guys that I played against Soye, where I ended up playing the new meta strat with Stormcallers and Melting Points. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So, in this very game, I'm offered multiple cards and I don't like any of these options, so I decide to go for Aerial Specialist with Crawlers and Stormcallers, knowing that Stormcallers are now more viable since a new patch that nerfed the effectiveness of AMs. My opponent decides to go for Heavy Armor Specialist, starting out with Arclights and Sledges. I'm relatively happy to see this because I know that Stormcallers are actually quite strong versus Sledges, at least in the early game. Of course, this is somewhat mitigated because of the fact that my opponent's units have more health, but still I thought it was a decent matchup for me. So I go for a symmetrical setup. I have my crawlers as chaff, and I decide to pick up some more Arclights to deal with crawlers that I expect my opponent will take as the chaff of choice for round one. And that is indeed what my opponent decides to do. Both of us line up our units. And by the way, I decide to put my Stormcallers in the middle here. There's an argument to be made for putting them outside as well, but both are vulnerable to one counter. Namely, my opponent could go for Crawlers in the middle here to try and distract both of my Stormcallers, at least for their first salvo. If I put it on the outside, the same can happen with flanking Crawlers. So I decided to put them in the inside and have them a little bit more safe, just in case. Also, putting them in columns here make sure that they fire, that they stagger their fire, so they don't all fire at the same target immediately, and usually that means that they're able to deal more consistent damage. Opponent does take the first round. It is somewhat expected. Heavy Armor Specialist definitely is strongest in the early game. And with Supply Specialist being offered, I always take this whenever it shows up. It is just such a strong card. Only 50 credits invested, and you get 50 credits every round after that. Soya agrees with me and also picks that. And I decided to just keep on buying Stormcallers in this situation. Just keep on buying Stormcallers. I can only buy one because I decided to pick up the Supply Specialist card, and likely going to be some more Crawlers in addition to that. Or actually could also go for an Arclight here, because I do see that there are some more, there might be a third pack of Crawlers, and that is indeed what I decide to do. So additional Arclight being picked up. Opponent now going for what I said would be a decent counter to my setup here, being the Crawlers here in the middle. They will draw fire from all three of my Stormcallers, so I will lose a lot of effectiveness there, but hopefully the second salvo will go on the targets that I want them to go on. Opponent decides to unlock Marksman, but hasn't bought them yet, however. Also, Mobile Beacon now being picked up, deciding to Mobile Beacon the Crawlers towards the side, which actually does pull my Stormcallers towards that side of the board. Although now the Crawlers at the back of the map means that finally my Stormcallers can start firing at the sledgehammers. Arclights were able to deal with all the chaff. And it's all up to the Stormcallers now. Stormcallers are there to deal with the sledges. The Arclights are there to deal with the Crawlers. Looks like they're doing a good job. Couple of Crawlers actually getting through. These are the Crawlers that were Mobile Beacons. Some of them managed to get all the way to the end of the path. But Stormcallers good enough here to take the second round. Meaning I don't lose too much tempo in this match. It seems like my Stormcallers indeed are able to deal with my opponent's units, as I hoped they would. Senior Manufacturing Specialist is being offered here, and when I saw this, I thought, you know what? There is a strat I want to try out. And It's become really popular ever since the new patch, which is mass Stormcallers in the front and then melters in the back. The reason for this is you take Incendiary on Stormcallers, which should get rid of all of the chaff that the opponent might have, and then the melters that are all the way at the back get in a little bit delayed and are able to deal with all of the remaining big units. Opponent, by the way, also went for Senior Manufacturing Specialist, so definitely could expect more of these. I double down on the Stormcallers, picking up 2 additional ones on the sides now. And I decide to also pick up a couple more Crawlers. The idea here was maybe they could distract some of the Crawlers over here, and maybe that would reduce the distraction that they're causing. But it's just one pack, so still a lot of my Stormcallers are able to fire at the preferred targets. My opponent would need a couple more Crawlers in the front if he wants to distract for longer. Looks like we're doing okay. My opponent did level some of the sledgehammers, by the way, and also finally picked up Marksman. Level 2 sledges, really tanky. Left side seems to be winning. Did not have to deal with these level 2 tanks. Still a couple of Crawlers left, and I'm not sure if we'll be able to get rid of them. Oh! One lone Crawler causing a lot of problems here. I believe he's got under the gun line, so the Stormcallers actually cannot see it just yet, but as they walk towards the tower, finally they gain some range and are able to turn around and deal with that final Crawler. Pesky little thing. So here we're offered not the best cards, I would say. A lot of these aren't that useful. None of us want to go Steel Balls. Anti-interference module is really not ideal. It's super situational, and even then it can only go on one unit. Assault Fang, none of us really want to go for Fangs, so Amcor is the item of choice. Easy pickings. And what I was debating here in round 4 is whether or not to already grab some melting points or to delay it for one more round. I finally decide that I only have 850, so I could buy 2 melting points, but I'd rather invest into what I think is mandatory here, which is the fire on the Stormcallers. And with the low level sledges, the fire would still do some decent damage right now, whereas if I would get it later, the payoff would be less, because once sledges start getting levels, getting upgrades, my opponent could even have field maintenance at some point, then the fire becomes less useful for that. So I decided to invest into this instead. Also, I pick up Fangs in this situation. 3 packs of them in the front because I want them to create a bit more delay. My opponent decides to go for flanking Crawlers here, and this is what I was also talking about. So now using the trifecta of Crawlers to distract the Stormcallers in the middle as well as the ones on the sides. Fire, though, will start landing, and when you have this many Stormcallers, you can relatively reliably land fire and deal with the chaff. There are a few Crawlers here getting through, but once we start covering more and more of the field, this will definitely be in our favor. The flanks have already been won, and it's only about the middle right now. The level 2 sledges still are kind of problematic. Sledges are able to win this side, get the tower debuff, and are now making their way towards the Stormcallers. We also have the late Crawlers coming in, gnawing at their kneecaps. Everything else died in the fire, however. And I still have quite a few Stormcallers left, so that should be another round for me. Fire doing a good job. Looks like that was a correct decision for me, at least. It didn't cost me the round. So now that I have everything that I want for this comp, I can start building on phase 2, basically. I've already got my Stormcallers with fire that should deal with most of the chaff. I can now start building melting points, and here they are, 2 of them, to help out with the tanky sledges and arc lights. Opponent, by the way, still has the amp core, which he picked up last round. Doesn't seem like he used it on any of his units. They would be very good on these sledges. And like I said, field maintenance is now been picked up by my opponent, so recognizes that this is quite a strong upgrade versus fire. It pretty much entirely mitigates them. So the only thing that they would only have to worry about now is direct hits from the rockets. That being said, this is why I've got the melting points. The idea is that I will have many of these on the back line, and that will make them able to deal with pretty much anything. It doesn't matter that he doesn't have giants. The tanks are good enough here for me to justify going melting points. MPs don't have any upgrades yet, so it will take a while for them to get online, but a lot of the upgrades on here very good. So if I can manage to survive a couple rounds and get this running, I am confident that I can win the game I can win the late game. For the people, by the way, that have watched the EU mini tournament from this week, Rat was actually able to beat Sarah in the finals with this exact comp, which is why I thought, you know what, I need to get used to this new meta. And yeah, let's give it a try. Let's give it a try. Opponent can go for extended range sledges here. It would make them slightly more vulnerable, but it is a strong card. And does go for it. I grab myself a barrier because I know it's a very strong item, especially on melting points. Just the 100 investment is so worth for a shield that is basically 1.5 shield generator. Also stays across multiple rounds, so it will definitely pay off. Plus you can move it, right? So it stays with the unit it's on. So really, really powerful. Definitely something I could recommend to anyone. That goes for ground giants. I decided to go for crawler production as my first upgrade. I am not certain if that is the correct play. Range might have been more beneficial in this instance. The crawlers are definitely mandatory, I believe, because it makes sure that every now and then a couple crawlers are spawned, and that creates a distraction for any units that might deal with the melting points. My opponent decides that Phoenixes is the way to go. This is an interesting decision because melting points actually can hit air units, and he already had the marksmen, which naturally have more range than the Phoenixes. So I don't entirely understand that decision. Phoenixes and marksmen are generally considered to be the same unit, as in they have the same purpose. Melters starting to lock onto the units now. Able to take out the high level sledges. They are in level 3 now, so starting to get really, really tanky. Can just sit in the fire perpetually. Tower goes down. But Melting Point has locked on to the sledge and able to take it out. Still though, 3 more to go. Looks like my opponent should be able to win this. And yep. High level sledges with the amp core here. Able to deal with my low range melting points. Out healing the damage from the Stormcallers. Meaning Soya takes another round. Very close round though, which is good for me still. I think late game, I've got this in the bag, so if I can mitigate any damage I take from losing rounds in the early game, like right now, or we're actually in the mid game already, round number 7, that is all fine by me. Soya deciding to go for Senior Defense Specialist, I think it definitely is the better option. Orbital could also be good here though, trying to deal some damage to the aerial units, but I would be surprised if I don't pick this. Yeah, going for the health here as well. Melting points, relatively tanky, 50,000 hit points each. So definitely justifiable there. In this situation, I am wondering about range or energy absorption. Both of them would be very good. Energy absorption would make them even tankier and enable them to heal off of the sledges and the big units. My opponent actually now also deciding to go for overlords. Interesting decision. Thinks that the air is the right way to go. It's understandable considering I do have a lot of ground-focused Stormcallers. So going air does mean that it would evade the damage from them. And that's probably also why he decided to go with Phoenixes alongside Marksman. Marksman can burn up in the fire, but Phoenixes will always be able to... Well, they're in the air, so they won't be bothered by it. I decide to go for energy absorption here, increasing my melting points HP by 40% and also allowing them to heal from all the damage they deal. Alongside that, I pick up 2 packs of Wasps with EMP. I do have EMP on the melting points as well, but it is really expensive as I'm already teching 2 upgrades. And 200 investment into EMP Fangs isn't that much, and hopefully trying to disable some of the tech on these. I'm not sure if it had much effect, but it definitely was a good distraction as well for the Phoenixes, the Marksmen, and the Overlords. So overall, not the worst decision. Melting points now locking on to the big targets, and with the energy absorption able to out-heal any damage that is being dealt to them. Even with the tower debuff, doesn't matter. Out-healing the damage here from the high-level sledges. Level 4 already, but it doesn't matter. Melting points showing who's boss. With 3 surviving, that is a lot of damage. Soya now below 2k HP. Soya decides to go for Speed Specialist here. I guess trying to evade some of the rockets from my Stormcallers. Sensible decision. Heavy Armor is a really nice item here. And I believe I do pick it up. Assault Fang. Well, it's too late for that. I'm not going for Fangs, so this wouldn't make any sense. Rhino Assault is okay, but it's only a one round thing. And at this stage of the game, I wouldn't get any value out of it. It's a level 1 Rhino. It would get 1 shot instantly, so I will grab Heavy Armor here and put it on one of my melting points. Can also upgrade the melting point, which would definitely help with the Heavy Armor, as it doubles the HP. Yep, I do decide to upgrade it to get the maximum value out of this item. 200,000, over 200,000 hit points now on the melting points. And a 3rd tech upgrade also being purchased alongside 2 more melters. EMP, Barrage, the 3rd tech upgrade. Looking at how these rounds went, I believe I should be able to take it out. Looks like I didn't need the range, because none of my opponent's units are really outranging my melting points by all that much. They've got 130 range, which is about the same as most of these units. And I believe the EMP would be way more valuable here. Able to disable the attacks on these tanky sledgehammers will make them way easier to deal with. All of the chaff is now burnt. Melters started to lock on to the Overlords, the sledges. Energy absorption, even after the nerf, still very strong in this situation. These melting points would have died a long time ago if not for that upgrade, but they're able to heal back to full every time. And that is that. Last sledge is now going down with 4 melters left alive, as well as a bunch of Stormcallers. That is the game. I was really happy with how this went. I tried out this meta comp for the first time and it worked out really well. Even against an opponent who didn't have giants when I bought the melting points, this worked out. And yeah, I think that going for a lot of early melting points, if you can, if you're in the position to do so, is really strong. They're kind of hard to counter, especially when you do have Stormcallers with Incendiary to deal with chaff. It just makes them able to deal with anything that comes their way. And by the way, last round, my opponent teched into motherships to produce wasps, and it did not matter whatsoever. I've got so many melting points that they were just able to deal even with the air chaff. So yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to like the video or subscribe if you want to stay up to date with all my latest videos. And yeah, see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.